approximately in 2007, when I lived in New Jersey, there was a compilation of 4 volumes in Hebrew called Sefer Arzeh HaLebanon. And Arzeh HaLebanon is a 4-volume set of approximately 4,500 Sephardic rabbinical figures, and they're all documented. So my thought to Rabbi Shimon Wanunu, who's the author, I told him, how about the authors, the rabbis, the composers of other works or anything of the sort that are not known, that literally may live in a cave or may live in the Atlas Mountains or wherever it may be, okay? And he says, absolutely, these are the ones that are known. Imagine the ones that are unknown, and they're in the thousands as well. So thank God, not only in the Sephardic rabbinical leadership as a whole, but in particular Moroccan rabbinical leadership, there's literally thousands of rabbis which helped formulate the outcome of communities. Okay, so just a very interesting point that I've always said in numerous seminars is good leaders will create followers, and great leaders will create great leaders. It's hard for a leader to create actual leaders. John Adams, the 6th President of the United States, said an amazing quote regarding leadership. If your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader. The concept of Emunat Chachamim, I'm going to start off in one episode in Syria and segue to Morocco immediately. The 18th and 19th century, they were so, how shall I say, adapted, loved and admired rabbis, that they even paid a rabbi's family, they were hired, a rabbi, his wife, and children, to live in their back house. I noticed when I traveled many times to Los Angeles, they had a guest house. So it's sort of like the guest house in Aleppo, and Khaled in particular, in Aram Soba, they had this custom in the 18th and 19th century to have these guest homes of bringing in a rabbi, his wife, and their children in order to influence that particular family. Most of the families that did that were wealthy. Just very, very interesting. Another difference, and then immediately I'll segue to Moroccan rabbinical leadership, is just so we know, just on a basic level of Ashkenazim and Sephardim, from a rabbinical standpoint, and difference is Rabbi Ovadia Yosef gave a lecture in 1970 in Yeshiva University, and he said the following: the Sephardic rabbis are the school and thought of Hillel, tending toward Chesed, and they do not have stringencies, and they only walk on the king's highway. Ashkenazim, however, have the quality of gvura, strength. They view halachic stringencies as a positive expression of God in comparison to Sephardic Jews in particular, had chesed and compassion, which they view halacha as a loving means as serving God. So, of course, different schools of approach and schools of thought. There's numerous contributions that I could go on for hours of rabbinical leadership, but I'll break it down into certain methodologies and talk about the personality, and then I'll conclude. There's 3 methodologies that Sephardic rabbis approached within their teachings. The first one was the methodology of the Rambam, Maimonides, which is a complete rationalistic approach towards Judaism. The second one is Kabbalah, which is a mystical approach, which the Chida writes, if you do not study the Torah according to Sod, you have a status of a parrot, of a mule. If you take the Samech from Pardes, then it is parrot. Therefore, you cannot be discounted. Therefore, you have to have Kabbalah in your life. However, the third methodology was Rabbi Yosef Karo, who is the author of the Codex of Jewish Law, such as known as the Shulchan Aruch. These 3 main methodologies consistently followed the Moroccan way of learning, as well as many followed the Rabat, and my colleague here, and also Francis Childbirth, Dr. Adam Anion, could elaborate more on this later on. So that's just more of a methodological way of approaching from the actual tendencies of teaching. So, but the main thing, ultimately, the intellectual integrity of Moroccan leadership is creativity. And the concept of creativity is Chidush. And in 1962, there was an article called Lonely Man of Faith, which ended up becoming a book, which ended up becoming a documentary. It actually started from an article, a book, then a documentary. It was authored by Rabbi Yosef Soloveitchik, and he says very interesting. Loneliness created a sense of faith, and within the faith created creativity. So when he was alone, it created creativity ultimately. So then I took it to a different level. I noticed Moroccan Jews weren't a typical Sephardic Jew. They were North African, they weren't in the Middle East. They did not follow Edut Mizrach, they did not follow 100% according to Rabbi Yosef's methodology. They did not have very similar tendencies of Egyptian Jewry, Syrian Jewry, and the like. And I've lived within New York and New Jersey's community for approximately 5 years. So, in essence, Moroccan Jews didn't follow their way of teachings. So I always felt they're a yachid, their own individuality. When a community or a person has their own individuality, they tend to be lonely. And when they tend to be lonely, they tend to be creative. And when they tend to be creative, they tend to be brilliant and pour onto the world. That is why I think Moroccan rabbinical leadership in the past, not so much today unfortunately, but certainly in the past, which is that's the goal of course, is that they spill over within their Torah, their commentaries, and their works in a way of life, in a way of communicating with the community. It's beautiful when I see an old Moroccan woman kiss the garment of a chacham. That's the way it is. That's the way it's supposed to be. It's because, and where did that stem from? That stemmed, I believe, that love, that passion from within Morocco's culture. Rabbi Moshe Malka, and I'll be concluding shortly, wrote in his Sefer Mikveh Mayim Chayim. He says, I am convinced that the times require adjustments and revitalization of the structure of Jewish religious life. But one must approach this with great care and seriousness. We must esteem the modern outlook to the extent that it doesn't conflict with Torah and tradition. Just a quick example, there's numerous creativity within halachic minds, within ways of approaching things on a day-to-day basis. But I could go on with Rabbi Yosef Nassas's internationally known Chidushei Torah and creativity, but I'll just give one of today, of 2016, of actually what I felt was, in a sense, creative, and I mentioned it to one of my colleagues, Eric, who was here, I mentioned it today to him. And yesterday, as we know, many of us were at the Jewish Museum. And we had an orchestra. And the orchestra was going on, and someone approached me respectfully and says, Yehuda, we have the Omer, which is a very strong minhag to not listen to music. It's not a halakha, it's a strong minhag not to listen to music. Okay? So he said, so I approached Rabbi Venziker, and he gave me the most simplistic answer, yet the most creative answer. And I turned to him, he's a rabbi, very respected rabbi, world-renowned, and he said, Yehuda, today is a Yom Simcha. I am in Morocco. Let's enjoy. So to me, understanding respectfully as a religious Jew, and as a person who always tries to consistently grow in spirituality, but ultimately I understand yesterday was the Omer. And we're not stopping that. We're a day away from having a big Hilul Muazzan, God willing. But to say that is beautiful. It is refreshing. It is more than creative. This is the continuation of having a proper rabbinical leadership. Conservative. So I commend you for that. Thank you. I want to conclude that within Moroccan rabbinical leadership involved with everything and not limited to one particular field. In other words, they didn't just learn Tanakh, they didn't just learn Gemara, they're open to anything and everything. Moroccan rabbis were openly humanistic, and because of that, the communities avoided division. In November 2013, I spoke and chaired a historic event honoring Sephardic Jewry in U.S. Congress, and I mentioned in a part of my speech the following, and I conclude. For centuries, there have been voices in exile. Perhaps now, this generation, when there are signs of the end of Israel's long exile, their voices will once again be heard. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure of mine to now introduce Laziza Dalir, the Vice President of the Imuna Association.